everybody. Welcome to another episode of Resilience+Rise, the podcast where we transform adversity into triumphs, illuminate the extraordinary potential within us. I'm your host, Thomas Scaria, a resilience coach, an ultramarathoner, and a firm believer in your next most powerful chapter. This podcast is a companion to my upcoming book, Resilience Plus Rise 26.2 Transformative Miles to Unleash Your Marathon of Life Mindset, coming March 2025, just a few months from now. Here we amplify the stories of hope, perseverance, and success to inspire your journey. As I just started, I put in a word extraordinary potential within all of us. Today, I don't know what's the word to be used, whether I'm honored, excited, privileged, whatever it is. I have Eric, Erika Rothenberger, a trailblazer. Yes, a trailblazer, a TED speaker, and empowerment advocate. Sorry, I'm just excited. Sorry about that. For women, from donning a hard hat in a male-dominated construction industry to stepping to a global stages, Erica has embraced the audacity, resilience, and purpose at every turn. Her journey is one of breaking barriers, balancing motherhood, overcoming profound challenges, and inspiring countless others, including me, to thrive. With this, I do not want to take more of your time. Erica, welcome to the
Oh
show.
my goodness, what an awesome introduction. I'm just going to press rewind play on that. Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Thomas.
As they say, you're worth it. I just been reading your background, and there are times wherein it was. I got the goosebumps, and the way you have transversed through the different areas and become who you are. Okay, I've read it, but can you take the audience through where you were and how you are currently?
Mm. All right, that's a deep question, but I will tell you, I don't know if it started because I grew up in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where the good old pilgrims landed in 1620. And let me tell you, if there was anyone that was resilient, I think it was those pilgrims that crossed the Atlantic Ocean and came here to, quote unquote, start America and land a rock somewhere. But what I will tell you is, like, through my own life, I think about my life that way, right? It's really been a journey, right? It's been a circuitous route. It's been ups and downs and ins and outs and trials and tribulations and so many things. And, some of my first memories of, having to really face resilience, I'll never forget being, in first grade and not being able to read and going to the reading specialist and feeling so humiliated that I was the one kid that got called out of class. Right. And that's like my earliest memory of, like, realizing, like, hey, listen, what did I need to do that was going to work through that difficulty or work through that adversity, right? And what I learned is at an early age, and then many, many other things throughout my life, through that circuitous route, was that looking back now, it was all those layers of resiliency that have taught me how to be more audacious, how to be more brave, how to be more bold, how to go after those things, how to just sometimes just get out of bed each day and keep doing the do when you don't feel like doing it. And, I don't know if it was, not having a date to the prom. I don't know if it was the fact that both my parents were alcoholics. I don't know if it was the fact that 2.5 years ago I was brutally assaulted and almost killed. Or it's just a combination of all of those things as you put them together in your life. And as the listeners, hearing this right now, think about your own tapestry, right? We all have punches. We all have things that have been thrown our way and have let us down, have made us scrape our knees, and some things that have knocked us literally to the ground. And then there's other things that are smaller things that just add up over time. But regardless of what your path looks like, what your punch looks like, what your layer of resiliency looks like, to me, this is my story. And we all have a story, and how beautiful that is, that when we can be raw and real and share that with each other, how we ultimately make not only ourselves more resilient, but we make other people more resilient.
A word which I hate is judgment. And
Mm.
currently, when I look at, when not only about me, but when somebody else looks at you, the image, wow, she's got everything. And in that last 2 minutes, you just went through blasting what your life was. That powerhouse, as they call it as. And yes, you are a trailblazer for many people. Let's start off with the first one is that you have been in the construction industry.
Mm.
The other day, I had seen you on LinkedIn with a head hat, and I know you have been doing it for a long time in a male dominated industry wherein it's a different ball game. And you are an inspiration. You allow, I believe, women and the men folk also to
Mm-hmm.
stand more stronger to who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you're a mother of three lovely children.
Two,
Oh,
and a
oh,
dog,
sorry.
So we can
Okay,
count that as a half a child.
sorry. So, when we talk about balancing all these different fields, how do you manage that?
Mm. And you know what? I think the best way to do it is to throw the word balance out the window. Because when
Beautiful.
we try to balance, like think about when you're on a seesaw when you were a kid. Could you ever really balance that seesaw? Was anything
Just go with the flow.
it was all over the place, right? So I think so often we're looking for this nirvana. We're looking for this perfect balance in life. And I don't think it exists. So the way I look at it is it's more like a jungle gym, right? And it's the integration. It's bringing my kids sometimes to a keynote speech to watch me. It's other times not being at work because I want to be at the Halloween parade. It's other days where, like I said, I show up and I have two different shoes on. It's never a perfect balance. It's more, hey, how am I integrating life, right? And I'm a big fan of bringing my kids into my life and showing them that like life doesn't have to be this linear path. And I was coaching someone the other day and I really talked about how when I really look at my career and I look at motherhood, it has been a jungle gym. Sometimes I'm like, yes, I can get to the top. And then there's other times I fall backwards and I go sidewards. And you know what I mean? There's other times that I just hit the ground. And I think if we approach life more that way, that, hey, listen, we're never going to find this perfect, like, hey, work and life and being a mom and managing this, it gets messy. But how blessed we are to have that mess, right? That mess or those setbacks are really what set us up for that next part of life. And if it weren't for all those setbacks that I've had and all those times where I haven't showed up as the best mom or haven't showed up as the best construction gal on site, it's okay, right? Like it's okay. That's all part of our story again of just giving ourselves grace. And I have a podcast called Grit, Grace, and Glitz. And it's specifically called Grit because when I think about it, I think about being audacious and going after the things. It's being gritty. It's like that sandpaper, that sound
Yes.
of that sandpaper that sometimes you have to go against the grain. But it's also reminding myself that sometimes we have to give ourselves that grace, right? Sometimes we're not going to show up. We won't be at the school function or we won't be able to go to the job site that day. Giving ourselves the grace to just say, I'm enough and it's okay. But remembering the last part of the last J there is glitz. And it's not the fancy car or the new purse or, the Rolex watch. I mean, all that stuff is great if that's what you're into. But really, the glitz is the joy every day that we are so blessed to be here. We had 1 in 400 trillion chances of being on this earth,
Oh,
like
yeah.
statistically. And the fact that we are here, we have to count all of our blessings every day.
On grit grace, and glitz. Beautiful. Very, very beautiful and very profound. But life threw a curveball at you around in 2022,
Yes.
wherein you mentioned that you were physically abused, you were literally taken, I mean, you just stared death in its eyes. You had all the reasons, these three pillars, what you talk about, to be crumbling down.
Mm,
But, Erica, what I'm seeing in front of me, I mean, is absolutely a phoenix, rising so much more stronger, so much more higher, and in its own way, telling the world, in its own way, maybe saying the F word, I can do what I can do. How?
mm. I'll
Again,
never.
sorry. If it is sorry for interrupting your thought. If it is, if you do not want to get into that thing,
Oh,
I'm
no, 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 no. I mean, I would tell you if I felt not comfortable. I'm pretty gritty that way. But I'll never forget that day, right? Like it was any other day. It was June 16th of 2022. Like I put on my favorite pink blazer, those matching pink shoes. The kids were with the sitter. The husband was in Kansas City. It was, a June day. Drove to work the exact same way I always did. But I pulled in that parking lot, and what I didn't know is that my life was going to change that day. What I didn't know is that I was going to be brutally assaulted and almost killed. What I didn't know is I was going to be rushed to trauma and still be 2.5 years later going to court with someone who brutally assaulted me who still hasn't gotten a sentence. I didn't know that was what the setup was supposed to be. But what I do know, and what I am so confident about today, and even days after the assault, was this happened like for me. And it's truly been such a gift. Speaking of the phoenix rising, I love that analogy. I've never called myself that, but really, what I really believe is there was something inside of me that I had kind of diminished or kind of repressed a little. And I'd always kind of been a gregarious, outgoing, in your face type person. But there was something in me that, because of that, because of what happened to me, that was truly probably the hardest thing I've ever gone through in life. It was also such a catalyst to go out there and be a light for other people. Because what I recognized, there was three things that happened that allowed me to be that light. Is one, I forgave him. I do not believe that he should not be punished. And I do not believe that there should be a proper sentencing. But I had to forgive to be able to move on and to be able to be who I am today. As hard as that was, I had to first forgive. And the second thing that I had to do is I had to work on me. I needed to go to the therapy. I needed to show up. I needed to journal. I needed to write. I needed to share it with other people because my story could be someone else's healing. And coming full circle, and just like we think about life, right? I realized that I needed to be that light. God gave me another day here to be that light for my children, for my husband, and for anyone that needed me to be that sparkle for them in life. And I had already had the podcast Grit, Grace, and Glitz, and it's exactly the analogy of how I healed through this process. It was really gritty when it first happened. I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. I barely detectives, police reports, all court hearings, just therapy, all of this stuff and trying to heal. And I realized that in that moment, I needed to give myself the grace that I deserved. But on the flip side of it, I realized that I was going to heal that much faster when I could be the glitz or the light for myself and for other people. And that's where I really realized I needed to go out and talk about this. I needed to speak about this, whether it was in business, whether it was in our marriage, whether it was in someone else who's been assaulted, whether it's the child that has the, terminal illness that you're dealing with, or the bitter divorce that someone else is going through. My story is just an analogy to your story. And I think if we could go through that process, recognizing we're going to have to go through gritty stuff, giving ourselves the grace, and ultimately coming out with the glitz, that's when you define resilience.
It's an honor. What else can I say? It's an honor talking to you, Erika. If I move, I don't know if I want to move, but this is like, okay, guys, to all the listeners who are over here, one of the elements which I know is that, from what I know about Erika, is she's beautifully a compassionate person. I'll be putting out her links in the comments. If at all you want to reach out to her, I believe she knows a page or two about life, and more than that also. Believe me, she does take out the time to respond. It may not be immediately in the next hour, but she will respond.
100%. And honestly, Thomas, that is one of my keynotes. So I have the audacity to be resilient, which talks about that story and some of the things that I just brought up. But I also have, because I recognize that I would have never have gotten through this without the power of meaningful connections. And that's my other keynote, and about how important connection is. And, I think for you, like, I'm leaving you hip-titty hop-titty voice notes and this, that, and the other. And that's who the way that I show up, whether it's on a podcast or it's on a voice message or it's online or it's with my own kids, is in that way. Like, I want to ask you on this, like, if you're listening to this right now, like, how do you want to be remembered? Right? We talk about this in one of my keynotes. How do you want to be remembered? We all have a title. We all have, the bank that we bank with. We all have the school we went to. But at the end of the day, how do you want to be remembered? When you walk out of that room, when you walk into that room, how do you want, if you could think of it in one word, how would you want to be remembered? And to me, my word, it was asked to me almost 20 years ago at an interview. And the word I said still remains true to me today. And that's effervescent, just full of life and full of just going after the things that I want. And there's days where, believe me, I am a very, not an effervescent. The bubbles are literally dribbling out of the tablet. But most days I'm I'm going to show up and give 110%, because I was given this gift. And I think even more after the incident that happened to me, I'm like, life is too short, because tomorrow,
Yes.
it could be that June 16th of 2022 could have been my last day on here, on this planet. And right before I got strangled, that was exactly how I felt, Thomas. It was like minutes watching the crease of his elbow come under my throat and knowing at that moment that may have been my last moment on this earth. But I was given another day. And 2.5 years later, gosh, I'm lucky.
I don't know if luck would be the right word. You're blessed. There's a reason why, because I always say there are times when I'm in the midst of coaching and I say that if there is a reason to die, there is 1,000 more reasons to live. And there will always be a reason why you have to live. But when you mentioned about the word that you mentioned, one word which comes up to me, which you have mentioned in a sprinkling, and is audacious. And I believe you're going to have a big, massive world event. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it is. I've just had a quick note on that particular thing. Can you tell the audience a little about the audacious event?
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question. I didn't even know you were going to ask it, because I haven't what I'll say is I haven't put it really out to the universe, but kind of out to the universe. So this is so fun. So I am hosting. It's been on my heart for the last year. There's been a calling for me to host a summit, the Audacious Summit. And it is going to be on October 17th of 2025. It is going to be a jam-packed, effervescent, audacious type of day with speakers, with charity components, with lots of surprises. And I cannot wait to get the people in that room who truly want to redefine what audacious looks like and to walk out of there bulletproof, bold, brave, and quite frankly, knowing they might have met some of their new best friends in that room.
So, guys, October 17th, right?
Yes.
2025. Connect with Erika on LinkedIn or on her website and be aware about what's happening around. And who knows, your life might change, always for the better. At least for me, after meeting Erika, after talking to her, there's always been such a beautiful sense of vibe, a sense of energy. And as she mentioned the word effervescent, it
Professor,
just
I don't even think I can spell it, but it came out.
it gets the message across. But again, when we talk about the friends, for me, one of the ideologies are there are no strangers, only friends we have not met. I repeat, there are no strangers, only friends we have not met. And that's how the community, how we grow. Just being mindful of the time. What would you like to tell the listeners, the audience, some of the key takeaways, how life has become? Like you have put out some amazing nuggets in the type of balance about grace, grits. But now we're coming towards the end, if you could spend a few minutes about what you would like to be a takeaway that you mentioned a beautiful statement, what people remember you as.
Mm.
So if you could just spend a few minutes on few takeaways,
Yeah.
your learnings about life.
Yeah. Oh goodness. That's a beautiful question. And I truly believe we have so many moments in our life that happen. And if you go back to the word effervescent that I brought up and all of the different things that happen in our life and the stories and the things that go really well and the things that don't go really well, I think it's truly remembering that this is a journey and we were not meant to do this journey alone. We were meant to be surrounded with people who are going to lift us, who are going to help us grow, who are going to energize us. And I'd ask you to do an evaluation of yourself right now. Who are those people in your life? And are they the people that are bringing you joy and that are lifting you up and that are there for you on your darkest days? Or are they not? And do you need to reassess that in your life? So first, reminding yourself you need to be surrounded by people who are inflating you instead of deflating you. Second, work on that muscle. Work on that muscle of resiliency. People ask me, they're like, can I buy it? Can I pick it up on 2-day Prime? Can I go to Walmart? I'm like, no. This is not one of those type of things. It is something that we need to work on day in and day out, because I will tell you, I was never expecting that day to happen that did. But I will tell you, it is because I was already working on that muscle in life. And you're going to need a level of resiliency at some point in your life. Maybe you've already needed it. And maybe you haven't had that blow or that punch yet. And that's okay. But to me, continually work on it. Because when we work on it, it gets so much easier through the highs and lows, the good, the bad. And that leads me to number 3 is just make people feel so seen. Make them feel so loved when they're around you. Especially if they're, someone that you really want to invest in. Because we will never, ever, ever forget what human connection will do. And I love this. I always love the saying, and I know it's cliche, and I know you've heard it 1,000 times. We forget most of the stuff that people say, right? You're going to only remember about 7% of this podcast, But I know you probably will not forget how my words made you feel. And how are we showing up for other people? And I'm not saying that you have to show up rah, rah, shish kamba every day. Believe me, we all have our days. But let's just remember that at the end of the day, you ask anyone who's starting to age, in the hospital bed, on their rocking chair, and you ask about what the most important thing is to them, and or the thing that they wish they had done more of, and it's connection. Connection is the number one recipe of success for longevity and for happiness. So work on those connections, grow those connections, and just remember on those days when you are not showing up as your best self, tomorrow's always a new day. Don't beat yourself up. Shake it off. Go to bed. Wake up and show up as the best version of yourself.
That's amazing. That was such, and guys, who, if you have listened to it, connection, connection, connection. But whilst we're talking about it, and you briefly touched again back to the day, that particular day, a question which comes up is that though you have explained it, there will be people, if it happens, I sincerely hope it doesn't, it should not happen, but if it happens, there are people who feel rather than seeing it another way, they feel guilty. They have got those three facets: fear, fight, flight, the three F's which get them deeper into the shell. And they feel guilty. They feel that it's their own shame. So if you could just help people, I know I'm taking more of your time, but if you could just tell the audience what, I know it's not one solution fits all, but something that made you more resilient. As you mentioned, there would be a statement that you may say which might click to somebody else who's going through their own private hell or their own space and did not know how to look for the door. What do
Mhm.
you?
I wish there was a perfect recipe. I wish I could say, take 2 cups of sugar and 3 cups of flour, and this is what's going to work. Right. And there could be someone listening to this right now who's in a really dark place. Right. And believe me, I've been there. Right. I don't know if it was the bouts of my own eating disorder. I don't know. It was when I had 2 miscarriages, when trying to have a third baby. I don't know if it was the day after when I was sitting in my gazebo after the assault, and hearing the giggles of my kids in the pool and wondering if I was going to be able to be a mom again. And I can't say that there's this perfect aha moment that just comes to you, but I truly believe that you need to start with yourself. Like so much we try to help everyone else. And what can you do to invest in yourself? And start simple. Start easy on yourself. Give yourself that grace.
Yes.
Read, listen to a podcast, surround yourself with those connections. Invest in you first. You can't put that face mask on everyone else if you haven't taken care of yourself. And what type of self-care do you need to do? Self-care doesn't mean you have to go run 3 miles at the gym. It doesn't mean you have to go have an intense workout. Self-care is loving yourself first and accepting yourself first, working through those flaws and understanding those flaws are part of your signature. Right? I realize every day how imperfect I am, but how imperfectly perfect I am for all of those things. And I wish I could tell you, if you're listening to this right now, you're like, but how? How do I do it? And literally the how behind it is one step in front of the other. Wake up tomorrow and invest in you. 5 minutes a day is 20 hours of self-development a year. We all can find 5 minutes. Now, what about you? What about if I double that or triple that for you? Could you give me 15 minutes a day to invest in you? and make that 60 hours. If I were to tell you to go spend 60 hours this week, you would never be able to find the time, right?
True.
But 60 hours, there's something that I always like to relate to. And there's so many people that get up and the next day they're so disciplined. They get up tomorrow and they're like, I'm going to do it. And they go to the gym for 3 hours. And then they don't go to the gym again for 30 days. Give me 30 minutes at the gym for the next 30 days. And that's when you see the results. It's not just the discipline on day 1 or day 2 or day 3. It's the consistency on day 30 and 31 and 32 that's going to get you there. So find goals, find something that you can do repetitively, something you can do consistently. Because when we try to do too much, we end up doing nothing to improve ourselves. We actually end up taking steps backwards. So don't try to be everything to everybody. Start with you first and then invest into other people.
Super. So thank you. Thank you is a small word, but thank you means a lot. In fact, the journey, what you have just mentioned. And guys, as I mentioned, this conversation, if it has not ignited your courage, challenged your limits, or empowered you to rise above, uh, I'm sorry about that. But to me, I can really feel the fire burning. As I mentioned, Resilience Rise is not just a podcast, it's a movement. It's a space where ordinary lives become extraordinary inspiration. Here we have got a walking, talking example of an Erika. We have seen the transformative power of resilience, the mind shifts, and that has changed challenges into opportunities. With this, I conclude today's session. Thank you so very much, Erika, for your space and time. Huge and much gratitude. Thank you.
Thank
Just
you.